Welcome back to the show, everyone. How in the heck are you? Hi, Dana.
Gwen, you sound so good on your microphone this morning.
I mean, thank goodness we go through the trouble of doing checks.
You're doing mic check? 1, 2, 1, 2. Now I know why they do that, right? Chuck,
Yeah.
all the crazy,
Chuck
it. Yeah.
No, thank you. For those of you in the audience, when I did our mic check, and I listened to our test, I was like, issues. Why does this sound like absolute crap?
That would be why.
All for you people.
All
for you.
It's funny, before we get started on what we're going to talk about today, just like sort of like a sensory note, like you can notice the difference. Last night, our dog kept standing on the edge of the couch and looking down in the entry room, and we're like, what the hell? And there was nothing down there. And then when I went down to take her out, the door to the basement was slightly ajar. So I think the sound signal, just how it sounded, was slightly different. And I normally hear those things, and she could hear it because, she's got these young ears. She's only 6 months old. And I was like, she's got sound sensitivity. It's probably normal for a 6-month-old puppy. But I see everything that way. Like, how did she hear that? But it reminds me of your microphone.
Yeah.
Like if there are slightly different things in the environment, you can pick them up as change, whereas other people are like, what are you talking about? But you can hear them. Yeah.
Well, and like from the other side of it, there's nothing worse than poor audio in a podcast.
Right. Yeah. Hey, good segue. That might lead you to having a meltdown if you were forced to listen to.
Or is it a panic attack?
Because you can't stand the sound. Yeah, panic attack or a meltdown. Which one is it?
Yeah. This has been coming up. They're not the same. And the reason why Dana and I are talking about this today is because I've just been hearing panic attacks being used more colloquially, I guess.
Yeah.
And when I get into understanding what's happening for somebody, I'm like, oh, that's a meltdown.
Yeah.
That's not a panic attack. And that, understanding the difference is really, really helpful to help you.
Exactly.
So.
Yeah. So like the good old fashioned panic attack. My mom used to have panic attacks. So in the good old days, and my wife will have them occasionally. She gets really good at knowing what the triggers are, right?
Yeah.
So you think about a panic attack as it can start physically similar to meltdown, but it really is thought to be in response to something pretty identifiable. There's like a trigger. So like for my mom, the thought of having to go up or down an escalator, she was afraid of heights, was very scary. And so we'd have to, like, if we went to the mall or something, we'd have to find either stairs or go find an elevator, which I was fine with. It's no biggie. But just even the anticipation of, a big escalator. Ironically, then I marry someone who doesn't like elevators. And so my wife will sit there if she has a meeting in this one building where she works and it's on the 17th floor, that's a lot of steps to go up.
Oh.
So she knows she's going to have to go in the elevator, and she'll kind of work herself up. She'll use those words. I'm not saying that in a judgy way, but she'll kind of perseverate on it coming and get more and more anxious to the point where she can make herself so anxious that she starts to feel like hyperventilating a little bit and her palms are getting sweaty and she's thinking about this thing. She's making herself anxious, even thinking about doing it, and she hasn't gotten there yet. So I've given her some tips to deal with it and so on. The way she deals with it now is to ask somebody that she knows to meet her there, or if she sees somebody else in the elevator, to say, I'm nervous in elevators. Would you mind just talking to me while we go up or something? And usually people are like, oh, sure, no problem. But better if she meets a workmate there and they can just she's fine when I'm in the elevator with her, but not at work if I'm not there, right? So that's more of a panic attack. It's about something that's coming, that the threat is typically not something that will really hurt you. Like if you were panicked about going into combat, that's not really a panic attack. That's appropriate fear, right?
Yeah.
So panic attack is really triggered more like that. Some people may not be aware of the triggers. They may find themselves in a panic state, right? But you really have like that physical heart beating, your palms are sweating, your heart might be palpitating, you may be thinking, feel like I'm going to die, your breathing changes, right? And we treat panic attacks differently in that we tell people that if you're having those physical cues, what are things that you can do to lower your arousal so that it doesn't flip all the way into panic? And we focus on kind of efficacy things like I just said with my wife, like, can you get there early and be in the lobby when someone you know is going to go? They're like your elevator buddy. You don't even have to. She's like, oh, I'm going to feel so stupid. I want to ask someone. I'm like, well, get there early. And then you know they're going to be on the elevator and just happen to go up in the elevator with them. She's like, oh, that's a great idea. So those kinds of things, and those are fairly easy to plan ahead of time, right? And sort of work your way through the fear, if you will, and not have the panic. And we, in panic attacks, we give over attribution to what our body's feeling, right? Oh my God, my body feels so scared, so now I must be panicked. So then it makes it worse, and now I'm even more panicked. And you get to that kind of, I would get those as a little kid. Like if I got really scared of something, I'd do that breathing that kids do when they're freaked out, right? That was sort of like a panic, right? And as soon as my mom was like, it's okay, you're safe, grab my hands, and then that would stop and I'd be okay. That's more panic. Meltdowns are a specific thing to autism, really. Some ADHD folks have that, but it's more of a sensory overload that accumulates, stress accumulates, and then you reach your breaking point and you can't take anything, you can't take any more. It's the proverbial one more straw and you lose it, right? You just like, I can't take it anymore. Or you start crying or you get angry or you throw something or whatever. So it can look a little bit like a panic attack, but with meltdowns, we see them more in kids because they don't really sort of know the antecedents or the triggers well enough yet. They're not good at communicating them to other people, and they're not good at recognizing them themselves. As an adult, like we went to a baseball game on Sunday, and I'm like, all right, I got to take my loops with me because that'll lower the sound. I'm going to get a small popcorn instead of hurting myself on the giant family size thing of kettle corn, because I know if I limit how much popcorn I can have, I'm not going to be worried. It sounds silly, but I'm not going to be worried the entire time about the fact that I ate enough popcorn to choke a horse, and then my stomach's going to blow up, and now I'm going to feel my pants are tight, and then the sound, and then I've had too much caffeine, right? Too much caffeine, and then I'm worried about, are we going to get home in time for me to have dinner? That is like sensory overload. And then that can go into meltdown, right?
Yes.
So I've learned stuff about myself that I can try to prevent meltdowns. And typically we focus on sensory stuff. And we focus on, for kids that are younger, like what can you have that's within your wheelhouse that you can control? So it's a little similar to panic attacks, but we see, and you can have both together, but we really see them as different because we look at them different and treat them different.
I think that's the issue, right? In order to get the right support and treatment or intervention, you do have to know what it is, right?
Yeah.
And Dana, would you agree, and I don't mean to be too reductionistic here, but would you agree that a panic attack is kind of preceded by thinking?
Yeah.
I'm thinking about this thing. I'm really fearful about this thing. I can't stop thinking about how scared I am about this thing.
That's what I mean, like the elevator thing. I'm thinking about it. I'm anticipating it. And now I'm getting more freaked out. Yeah, exactly.
Right. Like that there, that to me, that kind of clearly is the cause of a panic attack. It's definitely anxiety and fear. Sometimes we don't know the cause, obviously, because people have reported panic attacks out of the blue.
Right.
Right, in a grocery store or whatever. So I'm not saying that we're just, but really it is an intense emotion of anxiety and fear, right?
Yes, and it really is about your sort of cognitive aspects of yourself. It's good that you said, I don't mean to be too reductionistic, and some of the words we use in psychology are so pathologizing.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
We used to call it like faulty thinking and Adlerian.
Yes.
What they really meant by that was thinking that isn't necessarily based in reality. Like I have a full blown
Right.
I have a full-blown phobia to moths. Is a moth gonna ever kill me? No.
Yeah.
Could it get in my hair and make me lose my mind? Yes. Right. So it's irrational. Right.
Yeah.
My life isn't in danger from a moth. Maybe if there was one in my car and I was on the highway going 70 miles an hour, but it's not the
Yeah.
moth then. It's me going 70.
Yeah.
Versus sensory stuff that I know is bugging me, and can I control that? Can I do something about that? Right.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. I definitely see meltdowns as more sensory overload.
Mm-hmm.
Is that
Mm-hmm.
an accumulation of stressors?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
So it's this cumulative effect, which is why I think a lot of autistics get accused of being overreactive,
Yeah.
because they only see that one little thing. Maybe it's like, oh, you gave me a red pen instead of a blue pen, and now
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I'm not doing well. And it's
Yeah.
like, well,
Yeah.
actually, that literally was the straw that broke
The
the
last
camel's
straw.
back.
Yeah,
Like,
and I noticed,
you
like,
know,
yeah, meltdowns for me don't usually happen in the beginning of the day because it's
no,
cumulative. Sometimes they do, like, if I'm
yes,
traveling and I haven't slept all night and I can wake up that way. But yeah, it's
yeah.
usually an accumulation through the events of the day, and then it's just like, I can't take it anymore. Right. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think like on
And it can
top
be
of
sort of
just
explosive, right? It can be like,
yeah,
"Ah, I can't take it." Whereas panic, it's more like, I see it more of like, it's more of a pull in
yeah,
than it is a push out. I mean, that sort of
yeah,
seems a good delineator too.
maybe
Sorry,
a
I
good
cut you off.
delineator.
Yeah.
No, no, no. I mean, I think like, with meltdowns too, the thing that I see is when we don't know what we need, or
Mhm.
when we have a difficult time with communicating effectively.
Yeah.
This is really clear for me with a lot of clients I support that have different ways of communicating. Some are non-speakers,
Yeah.
and some have verbal language, but expressive language is difficult.
I
Pragmatic
can't
language is
imagine how
difficult.
hard that would be, and
Mm-hmm.
it would make you so much more prone to
Yeah.
meltdowns.
It's
Yeah.
it's extremely, like, if you just
Wow.
think about that minute after minute or day after day or week after
Yeah.
week of like
Yeah.
knowing what you want, like knowing your needs aren't getting met because you're uncomfortable, but you kind of
Yeah.
don't really know why,
Yeah.
and you don't
Yeah.
really know how to ask for it, or people misunderstand you.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
makes a lot of sense to me why we would melt down and then we burn out, right? So that's another
Yeah.
thing,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? Chronic meltdowns lead to burnout.
Yeah.
And
I was just
there's
thinking when
only
you're
so
talking about,
much.
yeah, not being
Yeah.
able to say something, I was just thinking of an example from last week where I'm so, my wife is not neurodivergent, but she has some sensory sound stuff. So she can sort of get some things, but we have the back door, screen door open during the morning and the day if the weather's nice, let some air in.
Yeah. Yeah.
So all day it had been open, hearing sounds from outside normally doesn't bother me, but we sat down for dinner. I said, I just need to close the back door. And
Yeah.
she kind of looked at me like, why? I said, I was trying to get the words for it. I said, it feels too open. And immediately she was like, I get it. Like, just saying that, like, so that's not something she feels, but that sort of like, I feel, ugh. You just know that
Yep.
there's a sensory thing. And so when you are younger, don't have the words for that, or the people in your life don't understand even something that's that cryptic and can help you,
Yep.
that will escalate. Like if someone is non-speaking or younger and doesn't know the cues and can't communicate those, even to yourself, you may, like you said, you touched on, you may not even be aware of what's going on.
You Well, like Dana, if we think about psychological development and the
Mm-hmm.
fact that language tends to be our primary symbol
Mm-hmm.
of our thoughts,
Yeah,
and
yeah, yeah,
um when you don't have that language faculty, like that, like where you don't have those symbolic representations that you can then
yeah,
use to communicate your needs or your wants, right,
yeah,
with
yeah,
others. It's just there's chronic frustration. And
yeah.
I see a lot of communication frustration for a lot of the clients that I support. um
And then they
and
just stop trying, right? You've talked about like
there's a
teens
learned
just shutting down.
helplessness.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
there's a learned helplessness and an anger and a resentment that builds. I
Mm-hmm.
mean,
Mm-hmm.
reasonably so when
Sure.
we think about what happens for people
Yeah,
chronically.
yeah.
But I think, like, in order to avoid or manage autistic, and I'm going to just say avoid autistic meltdowns, because what's that saying? It's easier to stay healthy than to get healthy, or whatever that is. I feel like that's the same for a meltdown. Like when you're melting down, it's past the point of no return. You just got to like know what you need in that moment and give yourself time to recoup and recover. And that's a question I ask a lot. How long does that take you? And I get like my clients like precise numbers. And I'm like, just give me an average. If we just
like how long it takes to recover, you're trying to ask? Is that
yes. And I get it. Like, or give me a range. Is it 1 hour, 1 day, 1 week, 2 weeks? Like, what is it? Because that tells me a lot about what are the chronic demands that you can manage without getting to this place. And this place feels awful.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. If you're living that way all the time, like you said, you get to burnout where I just imagine turning a light bulb on higher than the bulb is rated for.
Oh,
100-watt bulb, and you turn it up to 200, it'll burn out faster. And then it doesn't matter how much power you bring to it. It's just not going to work. And that's
a great analogy.
Yeah, that's what that's like, living in that all the time. And I just imagine that's got to be almost part and parcel for kids and teens and people before they're able to communicate those things. That must just be a constant sort of, we call comorbidity. They might just be in that phase all the time because they can't communicate it well. They haven't learned enough yet, right?
Yeah. And when they're not not necessarily in a support system that understands the nuances of this, what happens unintentionally is people get frustrated with them. Because they're not communicating what it is they need, and they're trying to do all the things, and they're trying to accommodate, and they're trying to meet needs, but it's not right. And so people get the other people get frustrated, right?
Yeah.
It's this kind of cycle. But I think this idea here is, if you're someone that has had a meltdown, what are the stressors? What are the sensory pieces? What overloads you? You really do have to try to understand those things so that we can really reduce meltdowns. And meltdowns will happen wherever. They don't just happen in private.
They'll never be rid of them completely, right? Yeah, and that sort of isn't a fair target to shoot for. But absolutely learning.
Yeah.
And so when I do something, say with my wife, like it's just too open, we don't get stuck on the if I'm right or not. We don't get stuck on, is there too much sound from outside? What do you mean it's too open? We don't get stuck on that. It's just, what do we need to do to help you? And that's what's so seminal to meltdowns too.
Yeah.
It's not a cognitive thing. It's not you're doing it wrong. It's not what's wrong with you. You ate too much popcorn, whatever it is, right? It's more, what do we need to do to bring that wattage down immediately? I mean, you do that sort of in panic attacks as well, but it really is, we just need to do what we need to do to get that level down, like you were saying with your kids. How much removal of sensory overload, internal or external, needs to happen until you can kind of relax, right?
Yeah.
I can feel that with training our puppy when she's really worked up about something. Last night, she was barking real loud at the doorbell, and I was just holding her. And I waited until, you could tell she was sort of fighting it. I want to go see. And then she stopped moving, but she was still tense. And then she got to the point where I could just feel her little body go like, and then
relax,
I'm like, now's the time so I'm telling her, come to me when you're stressed out, and then when you relax, she can't use words, but I know I can feel it. Right.
Yeah.
So that's what I notice in myself and other people I've worked with. How do you get to that state? And like you said, does it take 2 weeks? Does it take just being in a low sensory environment for an hour or so? What does it just take being removed from that environment? If it's just something like sound, getting away from it will take care of it, right?
Yep.
If it's something like I'm stressed about this unfinished thing at work and I'm really pissed at someone and yada, 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 a lot of it's up here, that might be a different strategy to deal with the meltdown. I may have to work with a therapist, let's say, to what are ways you can brain dump or bookmark that so you can let go of that to have enough time to lower your sort of sensory load, because you can get that from internal sources as well. And those are all things you have to learn over time, right?
Yep. Well, and let's look at the treatment or the supports for a panic attack.
Yeah.
Because in a panic attack, we do exposure.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Because the thing that you're fearful about or anxious about is not life-threatening.
Right.
And potentially it's necessary. Like they're
Yeah.
right? Like there are the elevator for like it's a great, great
Yep.
example of that you don't have to use elevators all the time, but sometimes you might.
Sometimes you do. You don't. They
When you
won't
got
let
to
you
go
on
to
the
the
stairs.
38th floor.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? Like
Right.
you
She would probably go up 38 floors, but sometimes they don't let you, so she has to take the elevator.
Right. Like there's, I'm thinking about like,
Yeah.
some hotels that are like that. They
Yeah.
don't let you in the stairs like that. You
No,
go
that's right.
down, but you
Yeah.
don't go
The
up,
fire
right?
stairs.
Or
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah.
We would do a graduated exposure protocol
Yes. Yeah.
on
Yeah.
a panic attack, and we would hierarchically
Mm-hmm.
lay out exposures. We would
Yeah.
ensure coping mechanisms are in place. We would take a
Yeah.
SUD score. We would do all of these things. But the reality is we would purposefully expose you to the trigger.
Yeah. And
That
then
is the
have you
very
be,
opposite in a
yeah.
meltdown.
Yeah. To not be panicked while you're exposed, to not be panicked while you're exposed,
Yep.
and slowly get you closer to it, not
Right.
panicking. Yeah. At meltdown, we
Right.
wouldn't like say, we're going to take you someplace really loud and expose you to it and see what
No.
happens. Yeah. Different way to look at it.
So that's
Yeah.
why it's really, really important for us to really start to have the conversation, just to
Yeah.
increase people's awareness about like the difference of a
Yeah.
panic attack and to an autistic meltdown.
Yeah.
Because the last thing we want to do is do a graduated exposure to the things that overwhelm you.
Right. The idea is you should be taking those away or finding ways to not be overwhelmed by those things. Yeah. Yeah.
That's right. That's right.
Sound,
Be more selective
sunglasses,
with your
headphones.
environment.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
Right.
Right.
Those
Yeah.
things, because those things aren't changing. Those are very hardwired.
Yeah, exactly.
The way that we input or
Yep.
receive sensory information.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's why,
It
there's a
kind of
lot of
reminds me though,
interventions out there. Yeah.
what might happen with a little kid, and a parent might say, I'm sick of you not wearing these socks. You're going to wear these socks. I'm putting
Yeah.
them on and you're going to school in these socks. And then the kid
Yeah.
sits there all day with the seam on their toe. That isn't going to work for sensory meltdown, right?
Yeah.
Whereas it might slowly work well for panic about toe sock seam.
Yeah.
Panic.
Toe
Yeah.
sock seam. But then, we know that the toe sock seam is probably not going to be a panic attack.
Right. Yeah.
But it's probably more sensory.
Sensory. Yes, exactly.
I was I'm exploring like allergy treatments right now just because my allergies are getting so bad. And I was of course in an allergy section of the hospital, because when you do allergies, you have to be by just in case.
Just in case.
Like,
yeah. Yeah.
just in case, right?
Mhm.
Something happens to you. And this little boy walks in with his dad and is terrified. Is already terrified. And for me, this is a true panic attack.
Yeah.
I'm terrified. I don't want to. He finds out, and this gets exacerbated by the fact that there is a particular nurse
Oh God.
that he does not appreciate or like.
Like the nurse ratchet.
And he goes,
type.
not so-and-so, not so-and-so. I just can't do it. I just can't get. And he's communicating. In the meantime, the dad, trying his hardest, pulling him towards this person.
Oh,
And another nurse says, okay, buddy, like, what is it? Can I help?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
what can
yeah.
I do to help you? Should I get some ice? Blah, blah, blah. And the
Oh,
other nurse
yeah.
proceeds to say, I'm the injection nurse today. It's just me.
Oh.
Which
If
then
that's a panic attack, that is not going to help. No.
Oh,
No,
because,
no.
well, guess what? It didn't.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
it
now we're
didn't.
screaming and we're tantruming and we fall into the ground. And I'm sitting in a waiting room like,
You want to do that too.
holy cow. And then a lady across from me looks at me and this boy says, he just jabs you. He jabs you in the arm. He just jabs you. He's like saying, he's communicating beautifully, by the way.
Yeah, yeah.
And a lady
hurts.
across
He
from
hurts when he
me
does it,
looks
yeah.
at me and she mouths, he's right. Okay. And I'm like, it's taken everything of me to be like, can I
Yeah,
just,
because you're like
can I-
you're in the
can I
know
help?
in so many ways.
Right?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah. Oh,
you're
God.
scared. It hurts.
Yeah.
This is why we do this. Can I help? Like, let's that's a panic attack.
Yeah, yeah,
Like,
yeah.
That clearly to me is something where I am terrified and I'm scared and I'm anxious because something's going to hurt.
Yeah. Because when
which
you're
by the
that
way,
little, you don't know that, like, as an adult, you can have things that hurt and you're like, well, it's not going to be forever and I deal with it. As a kid, you
yeah.
don't know.
No,
Yeah.
you don't have the cognitive
So you could do
strategies to
that
do
sort of
that.
graduated into that, even if it was the jabby nurse, you could do, we're going to do one step at a time. And then when he's about to jab you, we're going to go, "Blah, blah, blah," like we do with animals to
Right.
distract your nervous
We
system so you
just
don't feel it as much. There's all kinds
well,
of
and
ways
you
to,
know
or
what?
get him a
When
different
me
nurse.
I know. No, well, he was
Yeah.
the injection nurse. And I was like, okay, that's what pissed me off. Cause I was like,
Yeah.
dude, this is not about ego. He's like, I'm the injection nurse, so I'm all there is, and I'm the one
Yeah.
that's doing it. That's what he
Yeah.
said.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
He just like doubled down. This nurse just like doubled down. And I was like,
Oh,
really?
yeah. Yeah.
Every nurse, certified nurse here knows how to do an injection.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
part of their medical training.
Yeah.
Really? And then
Yeah.
I'm like, I used to get this little injection thing. Oh, I still have it for Mia. And it basically works off of the principle of just noticeable difference. It's
Yeah.
called a
Yeah.
shot blocker, right? And so
Yep.
it's like a little oval with a little like kind of cutout in it. But underneath this plastic thing are little spikes,
Yeah.
plastic
Yeah.
spikes. They don't hurt you. But when you put it on your arm, the sensation now
It
gets spread
distracts. Yeah.
out,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
right? And you can barely feel that prick.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
was like part of my coping ahead strategy
Yeah.
for my kiddo early on.
Yeah.
She hated shots. And I had a
Oh,
complete, like, of course, I
yeah.
had a complete idea about how to
Yeah.
support her through that without this
Yeah.
being a traumatic
Well, we
experience
do that
because
with
of how many
animals.
things.
It's
I
called single
know.
gate theory. If you have one stimulus going through
Yes.
that's pretty intense, the other one can't get through. So puppies and kittens now, you notice your dentist when you get a shot, they don't just give you a shot
Yes.
anymore. They're doing that for a
Yeah.
reason because your brain is like, oh my God, what's happening there? And you still feel the shot, but not nearly as intense as if they
Yeah.
weren't shaking your cheek. Yeah.
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 Yeah. So,
So yeah, there's all
anyway.
kinds of things, and that would be something that wouldn't work for meltdown. The more sensory input, the worse, right? Versus that graduated moving into something, that'd be more desensitization from a panic, of course. Yeah. That'd be
By the
bad for
way, that's a great litmus test. If you're not sure whether it's a panic attack or a meltdown,
if you
add
grab
in
your
more
teeth and shake it,
stimulus.
does it make it worse or does it help? If it
Blah,
makes
blah,
it
blah,
better,
blah, blah,
it's
blah.
probably a panic attack. If it makes it worse, it's probably a meltdown. That might actually work. That could actually work. You bring
You
up
know
something that's
what?
interesting too about panic.
Yeah.
Distraction with panic
Yeah.
works.
Yes.
Distraction with meltdown does not. It makes it
Nope.
worse.
No.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. That's a
You're
really good
welcome,
delineator.
everybody.
Yeah.
That's
we just
Dana
solved
and
the
I's
world's problem. Yeah.
distillation of a diagnostic.
Next time I have
In
to get like a
under
COVID
30
shot or
minutes.
something, I'm going to say to the nurse, "Excuse me,"
When
because they always, my arms are so little, they're just genetic. I always feel the needle go right into my bone, and they can feel it. And I'm like, yeah, there it is. Okay, I'm just gonna. It's just a thing.
do you want me to send you Mia's shot blocker? She doesn't have it anymore. She doesn't need
No,
it anymore.
I'm an adult now, and now it's like a point of pride that I can get through this. The nurses get grossed out, and I'm like, yeah, it doesn't even bother me anymore. They're like, oh, I'm so sorry I hit your bone. I'm like, yeah, it's okay. I know.
Dana.
Yeah, and it's just genetic. I've never had muscle mass here, even no matter what I do. It's kind of funny. But yeah, I bet that would help some. Yeah. That's really interesting. I hadn't thought about the distraction piece. I think distraction really is so good for panic because if it's a cognitive thing and you're perseverating on it, distraction pulls you away from that. If it's sensory, distraction doesn't work, it makes it worse. You can be pretty sure you're heading towards meltdown. It's totally a sensory thing.
Yeah, and brilliantly,
delineation
it's
tool.
why you guys are like,
Yeah.
hey, like, Sue, like, let's just have a conversation.
Yeah.
Let's have a
Yeah,
conversation,
exactly.
and
Yeah.
that's a distraction. In the elevator. It
Yeah.
basically help my brain not think about it. Can you help my brain attend to something else for a brief moment because I
Yes.
cannot unlock it. This thought is too sticky.
Yeah.
I can't get rid of it.
Yeah.
That's pretty clearly a panic attack, guys. Like
That's
that
right. That's right.
really
Yeah.
is that.
Yeah.
Whereas no amount actually trying to distract someone in a meltdown makes things worse.
Because I see people do that with little kids. The kids melting down. They're like, "Oh, look at the puppy! Look at the puppy!" And I'm like, "Oh, dude, that's bad. Just stop."
Yeah, it's like wow. It's
Hence
like
the just grabbing my puppy,
yes,
just grabbing her, not moving.
Yes. No,
I'm just like, we're gonna take it
deep
down.
pressure.
Yeah.
some deep pressure.
Yeah.
Like, let's try to like override the nervous system right now. Like,
Yes, exactly.
right?
Yeah.
That's different. It's just different.
Exactly. Yeah.
All right, everyone.
We solved the problem of panic attacks
That's it.
versus that's it.
Meltdowns. That's it.
Now.
That's the end of NeuroMarvels, everybody.
We'd like to patent that treatment specifier.
Done?
We want to
Yeah.
patent it. We're claiming it right now, just so you know.
Yeah. Yeah. We're going to write to the
copyright
medical
on it.
board, APA, any other stupid, and say, hey, ding dongs, this is how you do it.
Yeah.
We're so bad.
Ding dongs.
Yeah, but that's it. I think we've reached our high. We've peaked, Dana, and that's it for the NeuroMarvels podcast. We've done it all. All right, everyone.
All right.
In all seriousness, we will see you next week.
Yeah, we will. Okay. By the way, laughing probably helps both, I would imagine. Yeah, it's a good tension reliever. Yeah. Bye, everybody.
Bye, everyone. Be good to you. Bye.